Welcome to A to Z with Ali and Zilla, where we take you from real-world challenges to practical solutions.
From mindset and manifestation to culture, community, and building better systems born. This isn't just talk.
Let's get into it.
What's up, everybody? This is A to Z with Rod, Zilla, and Oyanga Ali. How's everything going today?
Man, it's going great, man. Back for another one, A to Z. This is Rodzilla, Oyanga. Man, what happens to consciousness, man? This is one of my favorite topics to talk about. So much in the past, we've been thinking about consciousness as something that's in the mind, but recent scientific discoveries saying maybe it starts with feelings. Maybe feelings. That old saying, I think, therefore I am, which was made famous by Descartes some years ago. Maybe it's I feel, therefore I am. So we're going to dive deep into consciousness today, ask a lot of questions. We're not consciousness experts, but we certainly have questions about it because we're all conscious beings. And what does it even mean to be conscious? Where does that come from? Is it just simply being alive, or is it something much deeper than that? Is it something that penetrates the fabric of life? Everything around us is consciousness, from chairs to trees, you name it. So that's what we're going to dive into today. So welcome to A to Z. What's up, man?
Hey, man, just sitting here chilling, getting ready to go visit my son. He has a birthday coming up soon. So, yeah, getting ready to go do that right after we clean up here. It's going to be nice, man. He's getting ready to go back to Utah. We done spoke about that before. But as far as consciousness goes, what is really consciousness? You know, you getting ready to dig deep into that question. And I'm
Yeah,
actually
man.
curious about the read because the notes you had are very interesting and intriguing. So go ahead, let's dig right into it right now.
I mean, first, I think it's important to just start with what the definition of consciousness is based on, neuroscience. And they define it as a subjective awareness of oneself, one's environment, which is the experiences, the sensations, the feelings, the emotions we have, and being aware of an internal state. But there's no real definition of what consciousness even is, which is that's an interesting fact right out the gate. There's no real consensus on what consciousness is. So um, that's a good place to start. And as I mentioned in that opening, the philosopher René Descartes came up with that saying, I think, therefore I am. You've heard of that one?
Yeah, I actually have. And it sounds
Yes.
very intelligent until you actually and until you actually think about it, and do some research.
Yeah, because, with that saying, he's saying, like, if I think, therefore I am, that thinking is what the consciousness derives from. So it brings the question, is that even really true? Does consciousness start before you even thinking? And this neuroscientist, Antonio Damasio, I'm going to pull up this article real quick so everyone can see it real quick. Let me share my screen. Are you able to see my screen?
Yeah, I can see it. I see it.
Okay. Yeah, so basically he's saying this neuroscientist, consciousness is a lower process compared to thinking, and very importantly, is a process that is protective of life. But he started digging deeper and found that the body has these homeostatic feelings, things such as hunger, uh, sadness, fear, and all these things are doing their best to create a homeostatic environment, which keeps everything at an equilibrium. And these things start to happen even before we start to think about it. So if you just can imagine, you're sitting around, you're hanging out with the family, and then your stomach starts to tell you you're hungry, but that signal comes from the brain, from the stomach, not the brain. And then the brain interprets that signal as hunger. Some people have those little rumblings in the stomach, and they interpret it a different way. Sometimes you even have to think about, like, man, am I hungry when you hear that signal? Um, and and then that's the conscious mind trying to interpret the consciousness that's already taken place in the body. So that's what he's proposing, that are these feelings that we're experiencing happening before we're even conscious of it. So if you take that a little bit deeper, maybe consciousness isn't something that you really think about. It's more of a state that's kind of happening around us.
Yeah, or like, because it also sounds like it's, yeah, same thing, but an observation of our surrounding areas, you know? Um,
Yeah.
so, but that would still mean that even plant life has consciousness, man. You know,
Yeah, I mean, what do you mean? Tell me a little
well,
bit deeper about plants.
in the sense of not okay. A good one is the Venus flytrap.
Okay.
You know, it's aware of when a fly lands on it or an ant walks across it, and it doesn't close before it waits until it gets to a specific area, and it can feel it, and then it closes. You know, and some people might argue, well, it has little fillers on the inside, little sensors on the inside, you know. So then at then it closes when it walks across. Or the other carnivorous plants, when it rains, right? When it's raining, the
Yeah.
ones that have the acid inside of it to eat whatever falls down inside of it, when it's raining, how does it know to spit that water out? You know, or to make the acids inside of there stronger, you know, to outweigh the water that went in, or does it when it closes, you know, all these different things. So that would be consciousness for the plant, and the protection of like the pine trees. So no other tree can grow up under it. It drops its pine needles. That's got to be an evolutionary thing, to poison, not poison the ground, but stop anything else from growing up underneath it with the chemicals, like chemical warfare. So that makes me think consciousness might not even be exactly what we might believe it is, or as something that's thinking.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely brings into question that statement, I think, therefore I am, because based on kind of a general idea of what consciousness is and what it means based on neuroscience is it's about experience, a sensation. And as you mentioned in that Venus flytrap, it's a sensing that something landed on it that is able to interpret as, hey, this is a fly. I should probably eat this. Um, and it's also an internal state that the Venus flytrap is monitoring, which is another facet of consciousness, is saying that I should eat this because I need to create homeostatic environment. And if I don't eat this thing, I won't continue to survive because these things like hunger, fear, they're survival mechanisms that are ingrained in something, not just humans, even
Just
like trees,
life in
plants, just
general.
life in general.
Yeah.
Life in general, yeah. So consciousness is, in my mind, I think it's certainly deeper than just thinking about it.
Yeah. We
So
might have just touched exactly what consciousness is.
already,
Life. Life.
consciousness is life. Okay, yeah,
Yeah. And whatever that's involved, maybe life is the big encompassing that, you know, it's like you have life, and then you have consciousness, and then you have thought, and then you have spirituality, or you know what I mean?
yeah,
It's so anything that's alive might be conscious. Maybe, yeah,
for
maybe
sure.
it's just that. I'm not for certain, but let's get deep. Let's keep on digging because it might change my mind on some things or enlighten me.
So yeah, so then another scientist in the same article starts talking about proto feelings or tiny proto conscious events, and through quantum processes such as wave function collapse. They're getting into some deep quantum physics here, but quantum just means the smallest unit of something, right? Something is quantum. So these thoughts and feelings are at the quantum level, very, very small, and they happening before the feelings even happen, which is kind of indicating that consciousness um, is something that's happening on such a quantum level that it goes before the mind can even register it. And that seems to be the case in modern, and he talks about panpsychism. I made some notes about this to create an analogy here. Let's see. I'm gonna stop sharing for a bit. Yeah, so create an analogy about that panpsychism. What was it, man? We're talking about like if you're imagining that you were a radio wave, if you could think about radio wave, they're everywhere. They're all around us all the time, floating around in the air.
Right.
But unless you own a radio that can tune into that signal, you can't really hear the radio or the song being played. And basically, what that panpsychism is saying that is just that, like that. So maybe consciousness works similarly, where our brain is kind of like uh, a radio transceiver, and in all these radio waves, which is consciousness, is all around us, and the brain is just picking up on it.
So that would mean at the same time, well, at least what I would believe, because that would mean that everybody is not on the same level of consciousness. And maybe that's why it's being confused on thinking, because everybody doesn't think the same, you know?
Right.
And if consciousness is on some sort of wavelength and everybody doesn't pick up the same wavelength, that would also, unless it's super basic, unless consciousness is super basic, protection, hunger, or survival and connection, because everything connects with stuff, right? That's something that's
Yeah.
common amongst all living things. And then survival. Maybe those two are the basic, or maybe there's a couple more that I'm not thinking of right now, but maybe those two are the basic things that deal with consciousness and thinking.
Survival. Yeah.
Yeah.
Survival is a huge one because once something is created, its only intent then is to stay created, to live. If you and your spouse get married and you want the bloodline to continue, and you just want that to continue, which is how you create, what do you call it? Eternity, by things just kind of wanting to stay in existence. And that survival mechanism certainly is a hardwired thing, just like consciousness. Um, is hardwired in to survive. And that's all we're really doing on a daily basis, trying to keep the energy going, because we know if it becomes stagnant, it dies. So that's why it's got to stay in motion, as the laws of thermodynamics tell us, energy and motion, right? So we got to keep things moving to stay alive, and that's a huge part of consciousness itself, like you said.
Well, so that would mean at the same time that there's a lot of people who don't understand what consciousness is, or there's a flaw in life right now, because there's a lot of,
Law in life. Tell me, what do you mean?
well, because there's like with that, as far as continuing and eternity being part of consciousness, right? Um, there's a lot of different ways of being right now, uh, or people's lifestyles that are right now that have cut eternity off, you know, for their bloodlines, you know, and some have manipulated or made a mechanical way in order to continue to, no, actually, they're putting their thoughts in other creatures to try to continue or whatever, or maybe they just don't care. So that may be either a flaw in the idea of what consciousness is, because we know there are creatures right now that do not want to continue, not
What do you
just,
mean, like certain human beings who might
yeah,
who
yeah,
might
okay,
want to who might not
okay,
want to live anymore?
right. Want their line to be done. And I'm not saying it's bad. I'm not saying it's bad. It's everybody has their own choice. But like certain homosexuals, certain transgenders, certain people who just say, I don't want to have children. I don't want to put
Okay.
any more children on this earth. The buck stops here. You know what I mean? So that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying it's a flaw because there's some people who want children and don't have the ability to reproduce,
Yeah.
you know? So maybe maybe that idea is either a flaw or
Yeah.
that's not part of what consciousness is. I'm
Ye-
just trying to figure this one out
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
that's a competing thought.
Yeah. I know that's an interesting question because I mean, on one hand, it does point out some ignorance in terms of how we view life itself. Like, for example, e- even if you don't have children, right? Your physical body will die, it will disintegrate and become something else in a new form. So you can't stop the the mechanisms that are in place for recycling energy so that the energy continues on, right? You
Right.
can't stop your body from degrading and becoming a different form, even if you wanted to, because that's how it works. Like energy can't be destroyed, it's only transferred. Even if you decide not to procreate, you can't stop that process. If you do decide to process, then procreate, you're going to have children, and that's another form of taking energy and putting it into something else where it can be transformed again. So, and I think that points to like a deeper law of how things really work. You can't stop the process. It's how it works,
Well,
no matter what you do with your brain.
well,
Does that, I don't know if
I,
that makes sense. And looks
it,
like you're going to argue argument about it. Let's go for it.
well, I was thinking about mummification
Okay.
because with mummification, it's supposed to preserve the body for a long, like it may be in their eyes a long time ago, they thought it preserved the body forever. Maybe they thought that. And it kills connection too, because if their body does decay, just like a coffin, it doesn't have connection with anything else because the coffins or sarcophagus, whatever, does not degrade. So it never gets back into the earth. It stays unconnected. And like there's so many different forms of what you just said that yeah, the body does have the ability to decompose and turn into another form of something. We supposedly can't stop that. But with mummification, their idea was probably to stop that. You know what I
At a
mean?
deeper level.
No,
Uh,
it was just an idea. It was just an idea. And it was, about, self it was about the decay, you know. The body
the
doesn't
body's on a big,
yeah, the
okay.
bodies, if they are decaying inside the mummification process, the body still is not going back into the earth. So there's a loss of connection. You know what I mean? Even with the now process, there's a loss of connection if if and when the body does decay inside of the casket. It doesn't go back into the earth. So is that
Yeah.
also a loss of consciousness? I mean, of course, death is, but when you're talking about as far as energy goes, as far as energy, you
Yeah.
know, it's not
Yeah.
being
Yeah. For
used
sure.
anymore. It's being trapped.
Okay. Yeah. The physical body's being trapped. I mean, it does beg the question, like, what does happen with death in the body, with consciousness even,
Because
like it,
consciousness deals with connection.
for sure.
That,
And
yeah,
I mean, it makes you wonder, like, because everything on a quantum level, right? Everything is alive. You look at cells under a microscope, and then you start breaking down cells into atoms, and you start looking at protons, neutrons, electrons. Uh, all those things are alive,
didn't think about that.
even 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 though you can't see it with your naked eye, it's still alive. It still has consciousness. It's still attempting to survive in a sense by exchanging energy back and forth on a quantum level. So in that sense, life as we know it, or consciousness as we know it, which I think we hit on something big earlier, that maybe consciousness is life, is still existing even on that level, even if it's seemingly separated, because on that level, the quantum level, everything is still alive and connected and moving, even if it looks like it's separate. Even though my hand looks like it's separate from this glass, or I guess you can't see the glass on the screen.
Bro, you pulling the
Those,
Matrix on me.
oh yes, hey man, that's one of my favorite movies, man. For sure. I got to drop it in when we can. Yeah, but it's like these cells are interacting, man, all the time, even though we can't see it, and we feel like it's solid. But we talked about briefly that that's based on vibratory rate, the rate in which things vibrate that create separateness, even separateness of thought, because we know consciousness can be on different levels too. And if you're at a different level of consciousness, in a sense, we're separated by the vibratory rate in which our minds or brains, or however you want to call what's processing those thoughts, keeps us in a energetic separateness, right, based on the vibration.
Okay.
But I don't know, um, you know what I mean? Like we'll say, me and this person are vibing. You're vibing because you're vibratory in the same thought frequency, and you see things eye to eye in a sense, because you have like ideas or ideals. Whereas somebody you're not vibing with, you have different thought patterns. You're not thinking about the same thing, so it seems like it's disconnected. But in the grand scheme, nothing new is in this um, realm that we live in. It's just separated by frequencies,
Okay.
but it's
Okay.
all encompassed in this one ecosystem.
So consciousness uh thrives in more than one realm of existence is basically your idea on this, right?
Of
Because
course.
oh, of course. Ooh, there you go. Of course. So in yeah, I guess that makes sense. That would make sense because the spiritual realm, there's got to be consciousness in order for morality to be there, right? There's got to be thought. There's got to be some sort of survival, I guess. Um, huh. Wait a minute. I got a question. If
Okay.
well, no, well, I no, I just thought about it. Um,
Okay.
so survival may not be may not be a necessary part of consciousness if we believe in the story of Adam and Eve.
What? All right. Break it. You gotta break it down. What Adam and
Well,
Eve got to do with it, man? Go
well,
for it.
the reason why I'm saying it is because when Adam first got there, we don't know how long he was there before Eve, right? And then Eve came. We don't know how long they was there. We just know there was children, and we know that Cain and Abel were the ones after when they got kicked out the garden. But when Cain left, there was already cities on the earth, right? So that means Adam and Eve already had a lot of babies. So my point in saying this is survival. When they was in the garden, they were conscious because Adam needed connection, but he didn't have any thoughts of I need to survive because nothing was dying. There was food everywhere. He wasn't thinking about being hungry. He wasn't thinking about wars. He wasn't thinking about anything that could hurt him, because he was in the garden with God, right? Walking around with the
Okay.
creator. So in that sense, the survival part was cut out, but
Okay.
he was still conscious. Or did consciousness come once they ate the apple and realized that they had to survive?
Man, you said a lot. Well, first of all, I'm gonna start with I don't think that's a literal story for one. And and two,
Right.
when the forbidden fruit was eaten, it just put a veil over their eyes of what was really happening. Because based on the law of thermodynamics, energy cannot be destroyed. It can only be converted. So that means death is, in the traditional sense of the way we think of it, doesn't really happen in the first place. But the veil was put over their eyes to think that they could die. But when you wake up to full awareness or a higher level of consciousness of what's going on, then you realize, oh, I'm an eternal being, meaning I'm an energetic being that never really dies. I just transfer into a new form, which is why Jesus, which if you believe Jesus, I don't think it's a literal story either. But he did come, and one of the things that he said was to take back the sting of death. So the veil is taken off the eyes then when you are moved to a higher Christ-like consciousness to realize that you're an eternal being. So the veil that was put on by the quote unquote sin of the forbidden fruit blinded men consciously of what they really were. And when you put on
Oh,
the higher consciousness again, you realize, oh, I'm an eternal being. I don't really die.
you
So
know,
that's how I think that works. So they just lost the connection, a vibrational connection, due to the ignorance of not knowing what they really were.
that was an interesting way to
Oh
put that.
man. Well, I would say it like this, man. I have heard it that way too, right? And the way we have to look at energy is it's on a continuum, right? So you have hot on one side, you have cold on the other. But at the end where they meet, they're kind of the same. You can be um, light and darkness work the same way. Um, and the reason why I say that is it's a matter of perspective, and we live in a very paradoxical environment where two things are all true at the same time. So you could say the veil was put over their eyes or taken off. At that point where they meet, it's the same thing. It's a new, different, a level of
Perspective.
consciousness that, huh? You
No,
get
I
what?
just
So
said perspective. That's all.
yeah, perspective. You know that symbol, the Ouroboros with the snake chasing his tail. The beginning of one thing is the end of another, and vice versa. So in one sense, they had the veil put on, but it does two things. It blinds them from the original thought the connection they had, and then connects them to something else. And depending on what perspective they decide to take, then will determine what happens. And it's kind of like that. And we can choose which one. Either one could be right at the both at the same time. But each one, the one that you choose will affect how you go out and live. And I had to look at uh like let's say anger and passion when because I wanted to find out in this particular topic what was the difference between an emotion and a feeling, right? And I know this is going a little bit off topic, but I'm gonna try to bring it back. An emotion
Okay.
and a feeling. So an emotion is a physiological response. So your heart rate, like if you see a dog chasing you, your heart rate goes up, your breath picks up, and all these physiological things happen. And then you have the feeling, well, that dog's running at me, I feel scared. Or person may say, I feel excited. But the physiological response is the same. And then whatever perspective you have on that will determine what you decide to do. So a lot of the consciousness talk is how we perceive the different things that are happening. So once they ate that fruit, they started to perceive things differently. They were always naked in the garden, but then they started to perceive the nakedness and be ashamed, which shows a shift in perspective of how they were viewing themselves, but nothing really changed physically.
Right.
So in that sense, you could say we ate the fruit, the veil was put on their eyes, and now they're blinded, or their eyes are open to something else. And in my point, I was saying that their eyes closed to the connection that they had and the awareness that they had about longevity and their ability to live forever. And now their eyes was closed to that, and now they see the perspective you're talking about, which was death, etc. But nothing
Hmm.
really changed other than their perspective and their perception of what was really happening. And when they made the choice, they switched into a different vibrational frequency mentally, which changed everything for them. And that's exactly how it is
Oh,
for us.
I dig that. Ooh, that is deep. That is deep. That's like enrolling people into your thoughts. Like,
Yeah, we talked about it a few weeks ago, huh, by enrolling.
yeah,
Yeah, I
and
remember
that
you pulled up a video about that.
so basically i- in that story, everything is exactly the same. They got enrolled into Satan's idea of death instead of God's idea of eternal life. Even though they're going to have eternal life somewhere, some way, they got enrolled into the concept of death. So their consciousness is vibrating death
Level of
and, and,
consciousness.
and everything that comes with it. That is deep.
And that's why I said earlier that when Jesus came in, and we know that Jesus is represented through other um, religious or spiritual cultures as Buddha, Krishna, so on and so forth. And that consciousness or that level of thinking is a raising of a vibrational frequency to a higher level to see things in a different light. That's why he's always got the light behind his head, because there's a new light or new information or new vibration or new way to see things that, hey, you don't really die. You're an eternal being. And if you accept this consciousness,
Mm,
you will start to have the self-realization that that's what is really happening here, not that you die. And
hmm.
and
We about to have church in this month. Yeah, I'm about to get up and
yeah,
start dancing, boy. Catching the Holy Ghost.
you
Go
wild,
ahead,
dude.
man. Go ahead.
Well,
I
hey, we
just
gotta
feel this,
get
man.
a drug
That's
up.
pretty dope. This is dope.
Yeah, yeah, man. It's yeah. So consciousness is then a realization that this is how it really works on a deep level uh versus just like your brain telling you things. It's way deeper than that.
So I
And
got a
it's that
question.
go ahead.
I got a question. I got a question because we talk about change and fixing stuff, right? That's what we
Yeah,
do. We talk about change and fixing stuff. And I think
yeah.
we hit a point right there with the consciousness part of how how it flipped. And that makes sense to me. So in order to help me, how does one change from one idea of consciousness and get back into the life consciousness? I mean, because the only way, like a Christian would say, the only way to get back into that world
Mhm.
is to follow Jesus, right?
Correct,
Or
correct.
Muslims would say follow Allah. So, or whoever, whatever race or whatever religion, whatever concept they would say, if you want to get into this life consciousness, you got to follow things that push life, right?
Yeah.
But in the Bible, there's a little bit of life. There's a lot of death. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
how do we change from this death conscious conscious thinking or conscious set to not so much creation, because you create on both sides, right? There's
Sure,
creation all
sure.
through whatever. That doesn't stop. There's energy on both sides. How do we get, and it's not just our thoughts, because consciousness, what we spoke about, is deeper. It's part
Yeah,
of life. It's
yes.
feelings, it's thoughts, it's emotions, it's all that stuff. How do we get that and switch that over into a life consciousness?
Oh man, that's a deep question. So first, it only takes a little bit of light to permeate darkness, right? That's so you only need a little bit of light. You know, if
Mm.
you're in a dark room, you only need a speck of light to be like, oh man, there's light there. So it doesn't take much light, just a little bit. And also, to bring it into more of a physiological concept, we have to realize that Christ, Satan are just energetic concepts of representation of how things are. One being on the positive side, one being on the negative side. And we have both of those poles. Negative being um, feminine, which is a receptive state. Masculine being positive, which is an outgoing state. Everything has those polarities. Every emotion has those polarities.
Hey,
And
let
if
me
we
say
go
this
back
real
to what,
quick. I got to
yeah,
interrupt you. I know you want to remember the polarities.
sure.
Just because he said females are negative doesn't mean he's saying anything bad about females. Understand that. He's talking about polarities, all right? If you want to switch it up in your mind and say the masculine is negative and the female is positive, go ahead. Whatever
Yeah,
floats your boat. Just know that
yeah.
he's just talking about polarities. All right, go ahead.
And also, yeah, no, I appreciate you doing that because it's masculine and feminine, not male and female. That's the distinction. Masculine and feminine, if I didn't say that. Feminine energy being a receptive type of force, whereas a masculine more is a penetrative force. This is why the sun is represented as a masculine force sometimes, because light can penetrate something. Earth being mother goddess, it can receive the light. So so to go back to what I was saying about the polarities, and thinking about your brain as a receptor, right? Your brain is a receiver of what happens. If something happens, your brain receives that information via sensory nerve. So if something touches you, your brain receives it. If someone punches you, your brain receives it. And then from there, that what it receives is neutral information. And at that point, you have the chance to react. And let's say anxiety on one end, and then you have excitement on the other. Your body will respond to something, a similar situation. Two people can have two similar situations. Like let's just say, what do you call it when you're doing an inner tube on a boat, right? And someone's pulling you behind. Some people can say that gives me anxiety to think about it. Some people say it gives them excitement. But
Okay.
it's a neutral thing. How your brain interprets that is totally based up to you. So to answer your question then, to go from an anxious state, which is connected to excitement on the other end, because everything is polarities, find an emotion that's in between anxiety and excitement, and then you move from that emotion to excitement. So
Okay.
basically, these feelings that you feel within your body are guides to let you know where you are with a given situation at any moment. And your goal is, in order to transfer that from a negative consciousness to a positive one, is to define, am I angry about this or am I passionate about this? Find an emotion that's in between to move to, more neutral, and then you move to the next emotion. It's hard to go from anger to full passion or anxiety to a full excitement.
Oh, okay.
So being aware of what's kind of an in between emotion or feeling that you could have, get to that one, and then move to the next one. And that is your guide of how to move from one state to the next state to the next state, um, by using your body and your physiology and what it's telling you about how you're experiencing something.
Oh, that right there is the key. I'm gonna have to listen to that one apart about 3 or 4 more times. That's pretty dope. I mean, like you said it right there. That is the answer for everybody, I believe. And if it wasn't for everybody, it was for me. I dig it. So I appreciate you, man. I love you for that right here, for real. Because I really do need that idea and tool to be able to change. Because before I was actually thinking that you have to be a part of delusional, right? You just killed the delusion, because what I was doing was I was when I'm over here on the negative part, I was skipping past the middle part. I was like, okay, I got to go all the way over here to the excitement and joy. And in that, my thoughts are like, this is some garbage. you know, oh man, this ain't real, blah, blah. I mean, I skipped the
Yeah,
calm down part. I skipped the middle, the neutral. I skipped the neutral and went to the other thing. And then that had me believing I'm being delusional, because
yeah, for sure.
I was being
Yeah,
delusional because I did not allow myself to settle in the neutral. And neutral is important, because even your car goes past a neutral space. Like when we're driving, you're
oh
in
yeah,
park. When you're in park, you got to go to neutral to go to drive. You got to put it in neutral again to go to reverse. And then when you're in if you're in a stick shift, every move is neutral.
yeah,
First to
man, that's deep.
first to second, to second to third, from third to fourth, from fourth to one, back to one, from one to five. All of those in between is neutral. So thank you. That's a good way for me to
Yeah,
keep that in mind. In order to shift from one polarity, from one consciousness to the next, wherever consciousness I am, whatever feelings, emotions that I'm in, and I want to get to a higher vibration, I have to understand I must go neutral first so it does not become delusion.
for
That,
sure. Because your body recognized it, man. You watched
yeah,
the last Airbender, the last
yeah,
Airbender,
yeah,
the
yes,
little
I did.
cartoon.
Yeah, yeah,
Well, this dude, Aang, I love this show. I think it speaks a lot about reality, to be honest. But he's an airbender. Then he got water bending down. And now he was trying to learn earth bending, right? So he could bend the earth.
right.
And the dude was like, man, you got to find a neutral Jing teacher to teach you earth bending. So he met this little girl who was using the neutral force. And Aang, he was confused, like, what is neutral?
That's the
Because he's
blind
thinking
girl,
about
right?
the little blind girl. Yeah.
Okay, okay.
She was using that neutral Jing. And what the neutral Jing allows you to do is to decide if you're going to attack or if you need to retreat, because it's right in the middle between both of those polarities. So the
Yeah,
neutral allows you to shift easier to I got to attack to, or to shift to hey, it's time to retreat. And her receptivity in the neutral state, because you're very receptive in the neutral state,
yeah,
and you can also move outward and penetrate or from that neutral state. But that allowed her to kick this dude's butt, who was like the baddest earthbender ever, because she was in this neutral gene. And that was the most powerful version of earthbending, was from the neutral point. And everything tells us, right? Like the truth is in the middle. We hear a lot, we have a lot of things about that neutral state. It's powerful, man, to be neutral. And because then you have access to your full power from the neutral state. But if you're on that negative side, it's hard to get the positive, man. Your body will realize, hey, man, you're being crazy right now, like you just said.
yeah, yeah,
It's a
yeah,
big leap.
yeah. That is a big leap, man. You feel all kinds of beautiful stuff out here, man. I like this topic. This topic inspires growth, and it inspires moving forward, and it inspires connection. Man, oh my gosh, creation. What about this? Man, this is big. This is a big topic. This is a big topic. I like this one. Maybe
Yeah,
we're
man.
gonna have to come back. We're gonna have to visit this one again. We're gonna have to visit this one again. Matter of fact, when we get done with this, share that with me, because because I know we didn't touch that whole article. We didn't
What am
touch
I
that whole
sharing?
article, huh?
Oh, the article?
Yeah, share that article.
Okay.
Because
Okay.
we didn't touch. I'm pretty sure we didn't touch everything, because there's so
Nah,
many
we
other
did it.
thoughts, so many other
Yeah.
thoughts, and as deep as and as many different legs that this has, man, we got to go deeper.
Yeah, for sure. We ain't even we didn't even hit the notes, man. I mean, I think it's like you said early on in the show, consciousness is life, man. And yeah, if we're living life, then we are aware of this consciousness. It's what we all are. It's what connects us all. It's what we go back to. It's what we came from. It's
Yeah,
everything. It's everything.
it
And I
touches
love those
religions
shows.
too. Go ahead.
Sure, I love those shows like Avatar. You know how
Yeah,
when they walking through the jungle and you see like when they taking the footsteps and everything lights up and how the trees are connected. I mean, it's kind of a visual interpretation of what's really happening. But we can
hey,
save that for next time.
yeah. Hey, I got a question for you. Have you ever
Yeah.
do you watch anime at all?
No,
Not really.
no, not really, not really. Tell me.
Okay.
I
Well,
know
no.
they go deep. I know they go
Yeah,
deep.
there's this one, and I don't want to get you involved in this one, but there's this one that is called like when that time I was reincarnated as a slime. It is a beautiful
Wow.
story. And
Okay.
now there's demons and monsters and humans, and there's it's not scary or demonic like you would think of like oh my gosh Satan and all that other stuff. No, it's not like that. But there are monsters. But it's a creation of a kingdom, and it's step by step, and it has the emotions involved, it has the people involved that you have to get together, you know, that they have to connect. There's it's like almost like the military, what we spoke about before, where the military uses so many different people in order to build and create its power, you know. And
Yeah.
that's the same thing that they do on this show as far as building the kingdom. You know, hey, your people are wonderful builders, you know, and this is one of the monsters. Your people are wonderful builders. I need houses for these other people who are wonderful gatherers, and they can create food and clothes. But then you got these blacksmiths over here, these elves. Hey, we can get those people over here to help us if we can give them this food and give them a house. And then we got this the humans over here that do. I mean, so that's part of consciousness too, also being aware, you
Yeah.
know, being aware of all the wonderful beautiful things that are around us. And so this topic is, I believe, is going to even reach that. So give me that.
Okay.
I need that. I got to have that. So because
Yeah, I got you, bro. I got you. I'll send it
need to
over.
we need to talk about this again. We need to talk about this again. Um, yeah, man. We need to talk. We get to talk about this one more time.
Oh yeah, man. Like I said earlier, man, this is one of my favorite topics because it really touches on who we are as people, um, and you know, a lot of I think my personal journey here has been rediscovering just that, like who we are as people. I can remember, you know, just longing to know how things really worked here as a child. You know, looking up at the stars and asking questions about this and that, and not really getting to the answers of what we are. And there's so much, and we started this whole thing with, you know, the scientists and people who study consciousness don't even have a real concrete definition of what it is. So it's a very vast subject that I'm certainly not going to crack the code by myself on what it is, but certainly I can give a glimpse, ask more questions, go deeper. I always appreciate the questions that you ask and what you bring to the table and, you know, your perspective because you challenge me to go deeper or think about things in a way I hadn't thought about it. I appreciate that. That's why we have these conversations on A to Z, man, so we can sharpen each other, just get sharper. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
yeah.
So
Are you ready to take us out of here, man?
Oh man, I thought that was it. I
Oh,
thought
my fault.
you
I
go.
know. I was. Hey, I was so much in gratitude right then. Uh,
Yeah, you got it, man. Thanks for letting me chop it up on this one. It was a good one. I'll let you get us up out of here, man.
all right, bro.